Hey there, it's Wendy here with Jazzy Doodle Designs and our Wind Down Wednesday. This week we're going to be talking about alcohol markers versus water-based markers and should we use them in our coloring books. Okay, so here's a list of the properties of water-based markers and alcohol-based markers. And I'm not going to sit down and read them to you, but there are a few things I want to point out. Water-based markers, while they're cheaper initially, will not last a lifetime. If I use my favorite marker color over and over again and it goes dry, if it's a water-based marker, I will need to purchase a whole new set. Most water-based markers are not open stock, and so you got to factor that into your cost. Also, nibs can become frayed over time, and in your alcohol-based markers, you can replace just the nib, and you can buy refills of your favorite color. And you can even buy replacement markers if something, your dog eats it or it loses it or something. So you have to weigh out your initial cost versus your lifetime cost. So if it's a medium that you really enjoy, cost can balance out over time. So let's talk about the convenience factor. You can get water-based markers at Walmart, whereas most alcohol-based markers aren't sold everywhere. You mostly have to find them in an art store. Now, in terms of talking about color books, the two probably most common concerns would be water-based markers can warp your paper, and some people, that makes them crazy. They don't want their paper to have that little bow to it. And on the flip side, alcohol-based markers will bleed through to the back. So if you're working in a two-page, a double-page coloring book, alcohol markers aren't going to be a good choice for that. The last thing that is important to think about in terms of coloring books or adult coloring is that water-based markers can be reactivated with water, which is not a problem unless you want to use another water media such as watercolor pencils or ink tints. So let's talk about some brands. Tombow is probably the industry leader in water-based markers. That said, it's also one of the most expensive. So what I would suggest is definitely look at more of a budget brand to start if you're unsure if you'll like working with the medium. Next, let's talk about alcohol-based markers. For years and years, Copic was the industry standard, and it probably still is as far as professional artists are concerned. However, Ohuhu has really come to the scene recently with their markers, and I feel like they could be a very good option for those looking for a cheaper alternative. But like we discussed before, Ohuhu at this point does not have open stock markers or replacement nibs and the like. So if markers have all these downsides, why would you want to use them on your pages? Well, for some, especially those that have trouble with their hands, it can be a godsend because you can lay down color easily. This allows you to spend less time with the colored pencils trying to get rid of the grainy look where the white of the paper is popping through. The marker has done that for you. So this puts considerably less strain on the hands. You can also use them to add depth to your pages, both before and after using colored pencil. So let's talk a little bit about marker tip types. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see 4 different size brush tips, and they vary in softness. Some are floppier, kind of like paint brushes, where some are stiffer and some are looser. You can find that in your brush tips as well. Your bullet tips are generally rounder. Then you have your fine tips that come to a point. the chisel, which is good for like bigger areas and a broader stroke, and then the ultra fine tips, which are more used for small details such as a dot in an eye or to do writing. You can find most of these tip types in both alcohol and water-based markers. So what I've done here is I've taken the Artistro paint marker, the Crayola Super Tip, the Tombow dual marker, a Pitt pen, a Staedtler Tri Plus fine liner, a Molotov acrylic paint pen, a Copic sketch marker, a Winsor & Newton watercolor marker, and I've basically swatched them out so that you could see the strokes that the markers make. Many of them are similar, but you can see here the Staedtler, the tri-tip with its fine liner. You can see how much smaller that is. You can really get some good details with something like this, as opposed to even the Tombow. The Tombow has a bullet that you can actually do some pretty small little dots and lines. But then you also have the brush tip, which is a soft brush tip and really lays down smooth color. So I just wanted you to see kind of the strokes. The next thing that I did was I created a circle, and using the Tombow, I did use the brush, and I just basically swatched down to show you that it will leave a little bit of a streaky consistency. Now this isn't too big of a problem because you're going to be going back over it. Well, let me rephrase that. If you're going to be going back over it with colored pencils, this shouldn't be a problem. The Copic chisel, while it did leave some streaks, was less, and I will say my Copic needed refilled. I don't have black refill for some reason. And then with the Copic brush, I was able to get a much smoother blend. And now when you flip it over, you're going to see that all of the alcohol markers came through. This is a Copic line. These are the Copic swatches and the two circles, whereas none of the other markers came through this heavier cardstock. The last test that I did was using just a watercolor brush, like this one, and I went through, and you can see that there are permanent colors. This one picks up a little bit. The Winsor & Newton, that's the watercolor one. So you would expect that. The Staedtler bleeds a little bit. The Pitt pen, the permanent Indian ink marker, does not. Tombow definitely does. Crayola Super Tip definitely does. The paint pen does not. The Copics do not. So when you're picking what marker to use, you need to look at your alcohol inks are going to bleed through, but they will blend better. Your watercolors and your all of your water-based markers will bleed. Now that's only a problem if you're going to add a water-based medium over the top of these. So if you used the Tombows and went in with colored pencil afterwards, you wouldn't have a problem. It's not going to bleed. But if you used ink tints and wanted to activate the ink tints, then it could also activate your Tombow. Okay, the last thing I'm going to go into is blendability. Now, I will say this. I've used Copics quite a bit in my life, and they don't blend well on this kind of paper. This is a very absorbent kind of paper. Copic is really designed to be used with marker paper such as Copic Express or Nina Solar White. So this is more what you would find in a color book, so I just want to be fair. So I'm just going to do a very simple not taking too much care here, but just showing you how these blend or don't blend on this paper. Now the downside to any sort of water-based medium here is, in order to get this blend, I really got to work this paper a little bit. And as you can see right here, it is starting to pill. And we didn't get a very great blend. And I can go in and try and soften that edge a little bit. But the more I add, the more this paper really is being destroyed. And you start getting some ghosting when you start working it that much. But the main thing is your paper will pill. And this is a very strong cardstock. It will absolutely destroy something like a Creative Haven or Amazon type of paper if you go in and try and do a lot of blending. Now there's other ways to go about this. You can use, you can spot them out on something like a palette and then use it like a watercolor. A lot of people do that and have a lot of success. And there's some really great videos out there. But let's just do the exact same process with our Copics here. I'm going to do the exact same order, just a light, dark on the edge, medium right next to it, blend it out. Now this is not how I would go about blending in general, but you can see I can do quite a few more layers, and I haven't, my paper is taking it and not giving me fits. Now that being said, do I like this blend? Not particularly, but I have to say it is, in my opinion, a smoother blend, even that rough guide. But you can see this paper, you can see the frayed edges, you can see the pilling, whereas here it's completely smooth, but completely goes through completely. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about is the creative. I sacrificed a page in the Creative Fanciful Birds book. And this is just the title page that I tore out. And what I did here is I used Tombow black and yellow here. And then I used Copics on this flower. I used Tombow with water and tried to do a little bit of blending. And as you can see, I got a little bit of warp in my page. And here I just used the Tombows straight out of the marker, but I used very pastel colors for these flowers. And then I went in with a darker marker here. And I just tried to be just in and out, just do a quick lay down of color. So let's look at the back. So here we have the light Tombow, which did fine. The black is starting to shadow. Down here is where we did the flower, and as you can see, no yellows popping through. but the blues are kind of seeping through a little bit. Definitely more in the darker blue than the lighter blue. And then here is where I added water and tried to do a little blending with the Tombows. And as you can see, we definitely had some bleed through. The Copics, there's just no getting around it. So the reason I'm showing you this is because this is kind of typical color book paper. Now, in the Fanciful Birds, along with a lot of other coloring books, they are one-sided for this reason. So you could totally do a page and not ruin another page because it's blank. But if you are working in a two-sided book, meaning on this side is a picture that you want to color, I would very much err on the side of caution when it comes to any sort of markers. Now, in books like Kirby Rosanis and Joanna Basford, and some of those that have that really heavier cardstock, much like the cardstock I was using here, where, you know, it's thicker and heavier, you can definitely get away with your watercolor markers. And as you can tell, I didn't really get much warpage, even doing the water test. It will warp it a little bit. On this thinner pages, you will get some warping if you start using too much water. And so just be cautious with that. That being said, guys, the whole point of adult coloring is relaxation, mental health, no stress. So if it stresses you out that your book might have a little curve in it like this, don't use it. If you don't care, go to town and have fun, because that's what this is all about. And I hope that you understand that this video is designed to just be an overview. I'm going to put a link to a deeper dive in water-based markers and alcohol markers by Lindsay the Frugal Crafter. I don't see the need in reinventing the wheel. She has, I don't know, 20 or 30 of each of these water-based markers and alcohol markers that she compares price, water solubility, longevity, blendability, all the things. And it's a really great resource. So those will be linked below. And then I also saw a video, and I want to say her name is Art Journey, and I believe she's from the UK, but I saw a really good video on colored water-based markers and coloring books, and she tests 3 different types of paper with a lot of different mediums. So I will also link that video in my description box, because those are really good resources if you want a deeper dive. However, if you want me to do a deeper dive on something specific, please jot it in the comments and I'd be happy to take it. So thanks for joining me tonight. And if you haven't already, please do the YouTubey things, like hit the like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.